Original science fiction at a major studio is something of a rare event these days. The big companies tend to put their money into franchises and sequels, while standalone stories increasingly head straight to streaming. No wide release, no real marketing push, no real chance to be noticed. Project Hail Mary is one of the few exceptions. The film opened in IMAX, earned strong reviews from both critics and audiences alike, and is already being discussed as a major awards contender, including Ryan Gosling for Best Actor.
I'm not an astronaut. I put the "not" in astronaut.
There's also a separate conversation around the performer behind Rocky, puppeteer James Ortiz. If the Academy allows him to be nominated, it will be a first. In this video essay, we'll look at whether Project Hail Mary really is the new sci-fi classic people are calling it, why this is a standout role in Ryan Gosling's career, and what this film is actually about. Spoiler, it's not really about saving humanity.
Your version of this is our thumbs up. Nope, that's thumbs down. We do the thumbs up. It's close enough.
Project Hail Mary is based on the novel of the same name by Andy Weir. The name should be familiar to most science fiction readers, primarily from Ridley Scott's The Martian, which was also based on a Weir novel and earned 7 Oscar nominations in its time. The two films look similar for a reason. Both belong to what's called hard science fiction, a subgenre where the story is built not on imagined future tech, but on real physics, real chemistry, real engineering. A Weir astronaut doesn't push a hyperdrive button. He calculates ballistic trajectories, monitors his oxygen supply, figures out how to build a water electrolysis unit from scrap. Most of his books follow the same shape. One protagonist, an isolated environment, a chain of engineering puzzles that have to be solved in order to survive. In The Martian, Mark Watney just needed to get home from Mars. In Project Hail Mary, high school biology teacher Ryland Grace has a bigger job, saving humanity from extinction. The screenplay, incidentally, was written by Drew Goddard, the same writer who adapted The Martian. The continuity isn't accidental. Goddard probably understands Weir's voice better than anyone in Hollywood, the way an engineering problem can quietly turn into a character moment. The directors of Project Hail Mary are Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, 21 Jump Street, the Lego Movie, the Spider-Verse films on which they served as producers. The pair built a reputation as inventive comedy filmmakers with a sharp, mischievous style. But for a long time, in the eyes of critics, they remained essentially craftsmen, talented but without claims to anything bigger. They had a shot at a major blockbuster too. Lord and Miller started shooting Solo, the Star Wars spin-off, but creative differences with Disney leadership ended that one before it finished. And ever since, a label has followed them, too irreverent for serious franchise work. Project Hail Mary quietly proves the opposite. This is, in every sense, an auteur film, one that fits seamlessly into the director's body of work. The protagonist is an ordinary high school teacher who, by accident of circumstance, turns out to be the only person who can save humanity. Pretty much the same arc as Emmett from the Lego Movie, a construction worker who ends up wearing the hero's cape by mistake. The premise itself echoes Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, another disaster film where a misunderstood genius uses science to save the world. And the dynamic between Grace and Rocky reads as the structural cousin of 21 Jump Street, where two characters with nothing in common have to figure out how to work together.
No.
The film opens as a grim apocalyptic drama, and the title already tells you the stakes. Hail Mary. A name that does double duty here, the prayer and the desperate last throw, the salvation and the leap of faith. The film leans on both meanings and never really lets you forget either. The story of a lonely man sent on a suicide mission who discovers, out in deep space, something he never had on Earth, a friend. In this sense, the film genuinely inherits the tradition of the best science fiction of decades past. E.T. films where contact with an extraterrestrial civilization leads not to a war of the worlds, but to cooperation. Tellingly, Project Hail Mary doesn't even have a personified villain, only the faceless astrophages, which, frankly, are hard even to see.
Uh-oh. Oh, died.
Rocky's design, by the way, looks nothing like a Star Wars cantina alien or some charming droid. There's almost nothing anthropomorphic about him. He's a stone spider, hence the name. But the encounters themselves play out in a deeply human register. Two socially awkward characters cautiously sizing each other up, then trying to find common ground, even as they remain forever separated by a barrier. Externally, the two are nothing alike. But over time, it becomes clear that Rocky and Grace are doubles. Both are loners with a passion for discovery. Both, when faced with death, didn't lose their composure and found the strength to work together. There's a strong humanist current running through Weir's science fiction in general. In The Martian, the entire world followed Mark Watney's fate. In Project Hail Mary, all of humanity tries to delay the apocalypse together, and Grace himself ends up forming an alliance with a non-human species. And though hard sci-fi tends to engage less with social questions, this film carries a clear message. Cooperation is the path to salvation.
There has to be boundaries.
Boundaries.
We have one mission, but we're two distinct individuals, both working on our distinct individual parts of that mission. Separately. Okay.
In Ryan Gosling's filmography, Project Hail Mary doesn't feel like an accidental film either. Over the past 15 years, the actor has become something of an emblem of a new kind of masculinity, the brooding but noble loner who meets a tragic end with dignity. From time to time, he's punctuated those roles with vivid comedic performances. The most notable, of course, being Barbie, where Gosling, with considerable enthusiasm, played a parody of himself. The film didn't quite tip into full-blown comedy, but we hadn't seen him like that in a long time. Rumpled, unshaven, long messy hair, and not exactly in his best physical shape. In his scenes with Rocky, Grace is often shown through the alien's protective screen, and the cracks running across the screen literally bisect the actor's face, markers of the fractured inner world Grace is carrying. Grace, in the most ordinary sense, a failure. His scientific career fell apart. He's good with kids, but his personal life never came together. The character is both similar to, and unlike, the heroes Gosling has played before. He may be the chosen one, but he'd happily decline the mission. Back on Earth, the laurels of a savior would surely be waiting, but he's in no rush to return home. A melancholic astronaut is, by the way, territory Gosling has already explored, in Damien Chazelle's First Man. Grace, in his own way, is a charming character, but you'd struggle to call him a hero in the traditional cinematic sense.
What the fudging?
It's no accident that the film opens with something close to a thriller setup. The protagonist wakes up alone aboard a spacecraft with no memory of who he is or how he got there. Stories built around amnesia are almost always, at their core, stories about the reassembly of identity. And Gosling's character has to find himself again from scratch. To do that, the directors needed a non-linear narrative, one that mirrors the hero's own stream of consciousness. We learn what preceded the flight at the same time he does. This also gives the film two parallel intrigues. One, how Grace ended up in space at all, given that he started out as a research scientist. The other, the outcome of the mission itself. Both halves of the film, the earthbound and the cosmic, are roughly equal in weight, but they're realized in completely different visual languages. The preparation of the expedition plays almost like a festival circuit drama, cold gray tones, handheld camera. Space, on the other hand, is pure epic. Its scale is reinforced by format shifts. IMAX lends Project Hail Mary a kind of galactic monumentality. Earthly reality looks emptily pale. The space sequences, by contrast, practically erupt in color. That alone is enough to tell us where Grace really feels he belongs.
In answer to your question, I have no idea what I'm doing in space. I don't remember.
Is okay. Grace find out when Grace go home.
The same logic governs the difference in scale. The narrow corridor where Grace and Rocky first meet, the cramped lab interiors, set against the breathtaking expanses of space. Space promises danger, but it's also a place of freedom. Much like The Martian, which lived on Matt Damon's shoulders, the story of Ryland Grace essentially rests on Gosling's charisma alone, but he isn't acting at full volume here. The opposite, he plays it very quietly. His range runs from a muted despair and a soft sadness to a faint spark in the eye and a small, modest smile. Even in critical moments, he doesn't lose composure and still manages between catastrophes to crack a joke.
I say either, you say
either.
no. I say neither, you say
Neither.
no.
His world flips upside down several times across the film, and that's marked, literally, by a turn of the camera or by an unconventional angle. The wide shots, both inside the ship and back on Earth, convincingly carry the weight of his loneliness. A sense of conviction, of textural reality, matters a great deal to the directors. Even on the Lego Movie, Lord and Miller worked hard to make the plastic figures feel alive, through tiny imperfections, smudges, fingerprints on the surfaces. On the Spider-Verse films, they pushed to bring the texture of comic book printing onto the screen, through deliberate roughness in the animation itself. Project Hail Mary works in the same key. It's no coincidence that the cinematographer is Greig Fraser, known for The Batman and the first two installments of the new Dune. In his projects, Fraser consistently pays close attention to textures and to the physical presence of the camera within the world of the film, whether it's the raindrops in The Batman or the sandstorm in Dune. Lens flares, light distortions that signal a flashback, reflections, sharp handheld pans, slightly deformed images. All of it adds to the on-screen sense of conviction.
Words of encouragement.
You can't just say words of encouragement.
Words of great encouragement.
As with other major recent projects, the team tried to minimize computer-generated imagery and rely on practical effects wherever possible. This scene, for instance, was created with LEDs on a wire mesh and droplets of water. To avoid leaning too heavily on green screen, the crew physically built the spaceship interiors and shot inside them, essentially as if making a documentary. We also see Grace from a number of different perspectives, from the position of someone on Earth who literally sees the protagonist on a computer screen, and from Rocky's perspective, rendered as an imitation of a night vision device. Both choices nicely diversify the film's visual register.
I'll do it.
Good. So what we do now?
Lord and Miller pushed for realism even in the smallest details. The interfaces on the ship's computers and instruments are modeled closely on real-world equivalents, even though sci-fi filmmakers typically simplify visual information for the sake of legibility. For all its stern opening, Project Hail Mary is a rare example of genuinely optimistic science fiction, the kind that feels like it drifted in from somewhere in the late 20th century. A lonely high school teacher finds a friend far from home. Aliens extend a hand. Humanity unites in the face of extinction. It's a contagiously inspiring film, one you genuinely want to call the new Interstellar. No space battles, no wars, no campaigns of extermination, the usual stock in trade of the space opera. Only the thrill of discovery and the ability to listen to someone else. Maybe the little blue planet really does have one more chance.